For over 40 years she kept Elvis Presley's biggest secrets. She cleaned his rooms, cooked his meals, and saw things no fan ever did. Then, just before she died, Elvis's trusted maid finally told the truth about his last day. What she revealed will shock every Elvis fan to the core. She was the woman who found his body. The woman who was told to clean up before the ambulance came. And now, her final confession changes everything we thought we knew about how the king really died. Before Elvis became the world-famous rock star in jumpsuits, Nancy Rooks knew him simply as Mr. Elvis. The man who liked his bacon extra crispy and always said please and thank you. She didn't meet him at a concert or behind velvet ropes. She met him in his kitchen at Graceland, often in his pajamas, sometimes asking if there was any pie left. Nancy started working as a maid and cook at Graceland in 1967. What began as a regular job soon became much more personal. Over 10 years she became part of Elvis's private world. She saw the real Elvis, not the star on stage, but the regular man at home. Graceland wasn't just a big house, it was a place of many moods. Some days Elvis would walk around at 2 in the morning, deep in thought, not talking to anyone. Other days, the house would be full of gospel music, and Nancy would find herself singing along with Elvis while she cooked. How Great Thou Art was his favorite song, and he'd smile when Nancy joined in, kitchen towel in one hand, frying pan in the other. Even though he was world famous, Elvis was humble around his staff. He was raised right, Nancy would say when people asked about him. No matter how busy things got with phones ringing and people coming and going, he always showed respect. Life at Graceland wasn't normal. Nancy worked strange hours, often late into the night because Elvis kept unusual times. If he was up at 3 a.m. wanting breakfast, she was there, ready to cook. She did much more than clean. Sometimes she'd help fix his pants while he was still wearing them. She laid out his clothes, arranged his things, and set up his pool area. In a place where day and night often mixed up, Nancy always adjusted without complaining. Years after Elvis died, Nancy wrote a book called Inside Graceland, Elvis's Maid Remembers. It was full of warm stories and funny memories, but even then something was missing. There were things she didn't share, things she didn't think the world was ready to hear, not because she was scared, but because she was loyal. Fans loved every word Nancy shared. They wanted to know everything about Elvis's private life, what he ate, what he wore at home, what he did in his free time. Nancy told just enough to make them happy while still protecting Elvis's memory. She told how he was very clean, often showering many times a day, how he liked his bacon crisp and his eggs scrambled just right, how his eyes, even when tired, would look around the room as if searching for something. But Nancy's greatest gift wasn't these small details, it was showing Elvis as a real person. Not a perfect star, not a joke, not a sad story, just a man who laughed, cried, sometimes ate too much, and sometimes wanted to be alone. A man who, despite his fame, only trusted a small group of people. Nancy was one of those trusted few. She never tried to get attention for herself. But as years passed, she started to hint that there were still secrets she hadn't told, parts of the story she'd kept hidden. When she finally said, "It's time to tell everything," those who knew her best wondered, what had she been keeping all these years? What had she seen in those final days that she chose to hide? The morning of August 16, 1977, started like many others at Graceland. Elvis had been up late playing racquetball with his fiancée Ginger Alden and his cousin Billy Smith. When he came back to the house, Nancy was already in the kitchen getting ready for the day. She remembers Elvis standing on the steps, clearly tired but polite as always. She offered him breakfast, like she always did. "No, I don't want anything to eat now," Elvis told her. "I just want to get some sleep, but I would like some water." Nancy didn't think much about it. It was hot in Memphis, and he'd just been playing sports. She asked another maid, Pauline, to take a jug of ice water upstairs, a plastic jug with a handle. What happened next seemed strange to Pauline. Elvis grabbed the jug and drank quickly, desperately, gulping the water down. "I ain't never seen him grab that water and drink it like he drank it this morning," Pauline said later. Nancy brushed it off. "He's probably just tired from racquetball," she said. But somehow the moment stuck in her mind. Around 9:30 a.m., Nancy heard a loud thump from upstairs. Not a crash exactly, but something big enough to make her stop and listen. She waited to hear if anyone called for help, but heard only silence. So she went on with her morning work. It wasn't until almost 1:50 p.m. that the intercom buzzed. Ginger's voice was shaky and hard to understand. "Who's down there? Something bad has happened up here." Nancy felt cold with fear. "What is it?" she asked. Then Ginger started crying, and Nancy knew this wasn't something small. This wasn't a broken glass or a minor accident. Something was very wrong. She dropped the phone and ran upstairs, her heart beating fast with each step. She turned down the hall, then into the dressing room, and there, on the bathroom floor, was Elvis, face down and not moving. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What is this?" Nancy didn't scream or freeze. She ran back downstairs to tell the Memphis Mafia, Elvis's group of close friends. As everyone realized what was happening, confusion turned to panic. Someone called an ambulance, but even in this crisis, Nancy stayed calm. When the paramedics arrived, they didn't know their way around Graceland. Nancy showed them how to get their stretcher up the stairs, through the tight hallways and around corners. When they finally brought Elvis downstairs, Nancy saw him one last time. "He looked just like he was asleep," she said later. But she noticed blue spots on his face, a sign he had been dead for some time. What followed was a blur of sirens, news vans, and crowds gathering. The world had lost Elvis Presley, but Nancy had lost Mr. Elvis, the man who once asked her to fix his pants while he joked with her. The official cause of death was heart attack. Nothing more, nothing less. But even then, some things didn't make sense. There were whispers about pill bottles, about the timeline not adding up, about what really happened between Elvis drinking that water and Nancy finding him on the bathroom floor. At the time, Nancy said nothing. She let the authorities handle everything. But decades later, she would look back at that morning, and this time, she wouldn't just talk about what she saw. She would share what she suspected, what she regretted, and what she might have helped cover up, without realizing it. For years after Elvis died, Nancy Rooks stayed quiet. Not because she had nothing to say, she had plenty, but because there were lines you just didn't cross. Not in Memphis, not when your life had been touched by someone like Elvis Presley. She had seen fans travel thousands of miles just to stand outside Graceland's gates. She'd seen grown men and women cry at the mention of Elvis's name, as if they'd lost a family member. Nancy understood the grief because she felt it too. Maybe that's why she chose silence over speaking out for so long. Nancy kept working for the Presley family. After Elvis died, she helped turn Graceland from a home into a museum. But there was one part of the house that stayed mostly untouched by tourists and reporters: Elvis's private rooms upstairs. According to Nancy, the bedroom and bathroom where Elvis died were only cleaned once or twice a month to keep dust away. It was an unspoken rule: no staying too long, no questions, no talking about it. You go up, you clean, you leave. But every time she walked through those rooms, the memories would come back. The same floor, the same hall, the same bathroom where it all ended. And every time she cleaned a surface or straightened a room, the images of that awful morning would return. She rarely talked about the details in public. Her book was gentle and happy, filled with stories that showed Elvis in a good light. But the final chapter, the one readers most wanted to know about, stayed vague. For most fans, that was enough. But those who knew Nancy personally noticed something else. In conversation, she would sometimes pause when certain topics came up. Her eyes would look away. Once she reportedly said, "If people knew what I know, they'd never hear his music the same way again." It wasn't a threat, it was a burden. As years passed, questions about Elvis's death continued. Why was there so much confusion about the timeline? Why were prescription bottles reportedly removed from the scene before investigators arrived? Why did the toxicology report go through many changes before being released to the public? And why did the people who were there that day, like Nancy, never clear up these questions? The truth is, she had tried, quietly, privately. Close friends said she had shared things with them over the years, always asking them to keep it secret. She mentioned things in the bathroom that shouldn't have been there, things Ginger was too upset to explain, and things Elvis's friends didn't want police looking into too closely. One troubling story suggested that Nancy had been told to tidy up the scene before paramedics arrived, though she never directly confirmed this herself. But time wore her down, not in anger, but in the weight of carrying something so important. When she got sick in her later years, something changed in her view. In an interview just a year before she died, she said, "I did my duty for the family, but I think someday before I go, the truth needs to be told." It wasn't rebellion, it was release. Shortly before her death in 2022, Nancy Rooks made a quiet but shocking admission. She didn't announce it publicly, or call the media. That wasn't her style. But those closest to her say that in her final months, she became more open, more direct. And then, one day, she said the words no one expected from the woman who had protected Elvis's secrets for over 40 years. "It's time to tell everything." At first those around her weren't sure what she meant. But it soon became clear that after years of keeping quiet, she was ready to unburden herself. Not for attention or drama, but for peace. Nancy had always defended Elvis publicly. She shared the nice stories and happy memories that fans loved. But what she hadn't revealed, what she had locked away, was what she believed truly happened in those final days. According to one friend, Nancy admitted that Elvis had been in poor health for weeks before his death, far worse than what the public knew. He was struggling, she reportedly said. Tired of the medicine, tired of pretending. She went further, saying that some of the medicines Elvis was taking weren't even prescribed for him, or were being given out by people close to him without proper medical oversight. She remembered seeing new prescription bottles in the trash almost every day that summer. She mentioned that Elvis had often fallen asleep suddenly, during conversations, during meals, even in the middle of sentences. At the time she thought it was just tiredness. Later she feared it was something much more serious. Most shocking was Nancy's revelation about what happened right after Elvis was found unconscious. When Ginger called downstairs crying, Nancy rushed to help as always. She saw Elvis unresponsive on the bathroom floor, and ran to alert others. But before the ambulance arrived, someone, Nancy never said who, told her to clean up just a little. In that moment, she didn't question it. She wiped surfaces, moved a towel, straightened a few things. It seemed harmless. But later, when questions about pills and timelines came up, she realized what she might have done. "I didn't know what I was covering up," she reportedly confessed. "I just did what I was told." These moments, the water Elvis drank too desperately, the thump she heard that morning, the quick cleanup before authorities arrived, had troubled her for decades. For years she convinced herself they didn't mean anything. But as her life neared its end, she wasn't so sure anymore. That's when she shared the thought that would change everything. Elvis didn't just die, he faded. And no one stopped it. Those words hung in the air. And they explain why in her final days, Nancy seemed to carry such a heavy weight. Not because of what she had done, but because of what she hadn't said. By staying silent, had she helped protect Elvis's memory, or had she accidentally protected those who failed to help him when he needed it most? When word of Nancy's final revelations began to spread, the reaction wasn't immediate. It spread slowly, much like the quiet way she had moved through Graceland, present, watching, but never drawing attention to herself. But as people understood what she had suggested, shock spread through Elvis's fans. They were split in their reaction. Some refused to believe it, preferring the simpler story from Nancy's book, loyal, uncomplicated, a nice tribute to their idol. But now the same loyal housekeeper was suggesting that Elvis's death wasn't sudden, that he had been getting worse for some time, and that she might have unknowingly helped clean up evidence before authorities arrived. The idea that evidence had been tampered with, even unintentionally, reopened old doubts. The official cause of death, heart failure, had always left room for questions. The mix of prescription drugs in his system, the delayed emergency call, the different stories from those who were there, all these things came back up for debate. Online forums filled with guesses and theories. Elvis experts rushed to rethink the timeline. Had Nancy really been told to clean something up? What exactly had she seen that morning? Why had she waited so long to come forward? And who had warned her to stay quiet? Others praised her courage. After decades of protecting the Presley image, perhaps she realized that truth and respect could go together. That fans deserved to know Elvis wasn't perfect. That even legends fall, sometimes slowly, sometimes quietly, and often while surrounded by people too afraid to step in.